that's highly critical of him. I do believe I've been right on both, but that's not really the goal here. The goal is context and providing what I think is something to make you think. It makes me think. We've gotten through 4 Laker games this year. You've really gotten the entire Westbrook experience. A lot of assists, a lot of turnovers. He's second most turnovers in the league. Last night, you had a 33-point game. You had game 1 where he couldn't shoot. You're getting all of it. His game doesn't have a ton of nuance. It's a lot of energy and speed. If he's hitting his, layups and balls that are, makeable shots for him, not threes, not long jumpers, then he has good nights. I've always used this. The analogy I would use with Westbrook, he's a little bit like the loudest, flashiest guy in a room, maybe in a lounge, gets the most attention, and people without discernment are impressed. But in the end, if you're still arguing that he's more impactful than Chris Paul or Steph Curry or Damian Lillard, you're impressed by that guy with a flashy shirt and that's loud. And I think every player in the NBA and in football has a comfort zone. Games in which they feel the most comfortable. For Kirk Cousins, the Minnesota Viking quarterback, it's that 1 p.m. window on Sunday against Detroit, a 500 team. It's never Sunday Night Football. It's never Monday Night Football. It's not a playoff game. And for Westbrook, a Tuesday night against the Spurs, LeBron's out, play 35 minutes, he's incredibly comfortable. You're going to get 15 games like last night for Westbrook. And he gives you everything. I mean, with this so far in this season, we've gotten exactly everything from Westbrook. He was averaging literally 5 turnovers a game entering last night. He was shooting 9% from three-point land entering last night. You get the gamut with him. The game didn't have a lot of nuance. That's why at 32 he feels kind of washed. And at 33, Steph Curry, whose game has a ton of nuance. LeBron James at 37, 38, his game has a ton of nuance. They age better. It's almost like in golf, there's the guy that's long off the tee, the John Daly, can't really putt, not good with his irons. He gets a lot of attention. He'll win some tournaments, but in the end, he doesn't age well because there's no refinement. The game is rough. Westbrook's game is rough, and I think his comfort zone are these games like last night when you just can let him go. It's an average opponent, play a bunch of minutes, and he feels free. LeBron's not on the floor. He gets the ball. He can control it. You're not going to get those in playoff games. It's not a critical. But I think what you've seen in only 4 games with the Lakers so far, 4 or 5 games, you've seen the entire Westbrook experience. Get used to this. There'll be these nights where like 33 points in 28 minutes. You're going to get these. And then you get to get the games like the game 1 where you cannot believe how bad of a shooter is. You'll get all of it. You'll always get energy. You'll always get minutes. And that's why the Lakers brought him in. It wasn't for postseason excellence. They're going to go to AD and LeBron in those spots. That's not, even Rondo can be important in those spots. But that's not why you brought him here. Joy with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
Well, the Packers announced Monday that Davante Adams was being placed on the COVID-19 reserve list, meaning he is highly unlikely to play tomorrow night against the Cardinals. And Aaron Rodgers said there was a shock factor when he heard the news about Adams, but they'll find a way to work around the situation. He said the team's dealt with playing without him in the past 2 years, and they're not a better team without him, but they found a way to win. They are 6-0 in those games.
It is. It's one of those stats where he's right. They are 6-0. But the betting market is telling you what most of you can see out there. This team feels really dependent on Davante Adams, and they're not really developing that. That's why he wanted Randall Cobb. Aaron tends to throw to people he trusts.
Right.
So he trusts Randall Cobb. He trusts Davante Adams. And it also feels, when the market moves 2.5 points for Davante Adams, what is the lineup to now? Is it 6.5 points?
Well, they're 6.5.
That means, think about that. Aaron Rodgers is a 6.5 point underdog.
Yeah, I think it's a lot.
It's a ton.
I think it's a lot of points. Now, other players have stepped up in Adams' absence in those games. I agree with you. He is very vital to this offense, and
Yes.
Aaron has become very comfortable with him. And he's also the best or one of the top 3 receivers in the league. So it is a major loss. They're also out without Allen Lazard. He was on the COVID list as well.
Yeah.
So they'll have Randall Cobb, Equanimeous St. Brown, and Robert Tonyan. And their defensive coordinator, Joe Barry, is also on the COVID-19 list and is expected not to join them for Thursday's game. So they're kind of up against it.
They are.
I still think it's a lot of points for the Packers.
I know.
We might be disrespecting a little bit.
I think it has a chance to be a blowout.
A blowout?
I do. I think it. You know what? Green Bay has 2 games like this a year, Joy. They travel. They're kind of up against it, and they just fold like a deck chair. Last year at Tampa was one of those games. They had 2 of them last year. They had 2 the year before. One was against the Chargers. One was against Philadelphia. That was a home game. One was against San Francisco. Sometimes when they're up against it, this team, I've said this about Aaron. They play better with a lead. They play better in comfort. They're a little finesse. When they get into these octagon games where there's some things working against them, they've shown in the recent years they can really fold fast in these spots.
I don't know. It feels like a trap. 6.5 points is a lot of points for
It's a lot.
But they do face the Cardinals tomorrow night in Arizona in what is the greatest Thursday night football game of all time. We thought it was Seahawks-Rams. We're backing off that now?
I think it's top 5. It was the greatest Thursday night football game ever, and then Devontae's out.
Devontae is out.
That's not top 5 now.
Okay. Well, as you said, they're 6.5 point underdogs according to Fox Bet.
Yeah.
So the World Series started last night and had a pretty crazy moment in it. So Braves starting pitcher Charlie Morton will miss the rest of the World Series after leaving Game 1 with a fractured bone in his leg. So we're showing here how it happened. It didn't look like that right away. He got hit by a batted ball, 102.4 mile per hour batted ball, which would shatter my leg.
Right.
But they were leading 5-0 when Morton struck out Jose Altuve on a broken leg. He almost went to the ground and came up with a limp, and he left the game in the bottom of the 3rd inning, throwing 44 pitches. Very impressive effort. Despite the setback, the Braves went on to win the game 6-2.
Got off to a great start and a big lead, and this is a thing because Charlie Morton is as trustable in a big spot as anybody on that staff.
Yeah, it puts an unexpected strain on their bullpen, on the Braves bullpen to start the series. World Series Game 2 is tonight at 7:30 Eastern on Fox. A.J. Minter, who replaced Morton, held the Astros to 3 hits and 1 run. So there's been some questions on whether or not Matt Nagy is losing the locker room. Allen Robinson's recent comments seem like Nagy is responsible for both his struggles and Justin Fields' struggles this season.
That's something that we're continuing to build on. Again, continuing to get reps in practice. It wasn't many snaps that we kind of took throughout training camp and stuff like that. So, a lot of these things, again, we're just trying to build on.
It's kind of an interesting thing. Now, this is again why I always say if you take a young quarterback, you need to make them the starter right away if they're the future, because you are taking snaps and development away from them.
But I would argue Mahomes sat, and he's been the best of all of them.
Yes, but there's outliers to situations.
Yeah.
You don't have Alex Smith. You had Andy Reid.
Right.
You had a very, very good roster.
Yeah.
And most of the time, these young quarterbacks are not going to a great roster. They're not going to Andy Reid. And
this offensive line, though, is so bad. So I was talking to somebody that covers this team in Chicago yesterday. And he said the concern is that the offensive line is so bad that Andy gets you in and out of, blitzes. You can ask a veteran quarterback to do that. Right now, Justin goes to the line, and if they bring heat, he's in big trouble.
No, he is, and he's been sacked 22 times, the most by any quarterback in the league so far this season, and he's only started 5 games. There's no denying the offensive line is a problem.
Mess.
And he's a rookie quarterback. So, but again, what Allen Robinson